Greetings, Kings. Bones Maloney here. High speeds paint their rifles, and when you paint a piece of equipment, you are intending to reduce its contrast on your body and increase its ability to become hidden or harder to see in the environments that you would be operating in. There's many different colors, methods, and options for how you paint a rifle, but there's also a lot of different kinds of paint too. And if I am going to commit to painting my rifle and obliterating its resale value, then I want to make sure I am using the best paint possible. But what is the best paint possible? There's many different companies that offer a variety of different camouflage paints, and today I have some of the most common. We are going to test against some controls as well and see which paint performs the best and which one should you choose for your rifle. So as I mentioned, we have three paints here, and I'll go ahead and break them each down very briefly. We have everybody's favorite Rust-Oleum camouflage paint. This stuff is everywhere. It's a go-to for a lot of guys. It's one of the cheapest options, and I picked up this can of Flat Army Green for around $5.86 for 12 ounces. That gives you 49 cents an ounce for this can of paint, which this is a very cheap option. It claims it is a non-reflective finish, ultra flat, and it is ideal for hunting and camping gear. So we're gonna test that. Next we have Krylon, which is another brand that is very popular, that is almost everywhere, and a lot of guys say to use, and a lot of the Krylon guys hate on the Rust-Oleum because this is, well, more expensive. This was actually $9.49 for 11 ounces, so that is 1 ounce less than the Rust-Oleum, and giving you a price of 96 cents an ounce. So it's nearly double the price of the Rust-Oleum, but is it worth it? Is it double the performance? It is claiming a non-reflective ultra flat finish, and this color is olive. So you'll see throughout the testing that I tried to get colors that were all very close to each other, some sort of flat green color. And finally, an oddball choice that I didn't really hear about or see much of until I looked into it, and that is Plastidip. And I have not heard of Plastidip since high school, and I'm sure a lot of you also have not. And they also make camo paint. So this claims to be more of a rubber coating, so maybe not the best for firearms, but we're gonna test it, see if this ends up being a less reflective option than the other two paints. And this one was the most expensive at $18, $18.49 for 11 ounces. That is $1.68 an ounce, making it the most expensive, but is this even a good option? Controls for the test are going to be what we use to compare these paints to and are important so we can measure how good or bad they perform. Right here we have a US Army/US Marine Corps issued high cut ECH with the stock finish and coat on it. This is going to be our control because these are very non-reflective, very IR compliant paints on these helmets. So this is going to be our control for a painted subject. Now it is textured, as you can see, but this is really going to be a good comparison of what we can try to hope to get at least close to with some of these paints. The other item we have, of course, is going to be a rifle. So we have our readiness rifle here, a Colt upper with an IWI lower, and we are going to see, compare it to these paints once they've been applied, not to the rifle, but to these canteens, which we'll get into in just a moment, and see how much they reduce the reflection and things like IR light and things of that nature. As for the testing, what we're gonna apply the paint to, our canvases, if you will, I just have three basic USGI canteens. I picked these because they are pretty textured already. They have, they're relatively porous of a material, so they should allow the paint to stick on really well. And they're all very simple and a slightly curved surface, and that'll help kind of show how much these paints reflect light, if they do at all. We have one that's slightly darker. This is going to be the Plastidip one, just to kind of differentiate, but they are just basic, unused USGI canteens. And of course, as a part of the control too, we can compare to the backside or the unpainted areas once these are done. All I've done is mark out a square onto the canteens that will be where we apply the paint, and I will be applying it as evenly and consistently as possible, going left to right until there is proper coating. And I also left some of the letters exposed to give us just kind of more of a more of a warped and curved surface area to see if that affects the paints at all as well. So when we paint these, it is relatively cold outside, so I will be doing it inside. We are going to paint them until they are properly coated. There is no visible color from the base of the canteen, and we will be allowing each of these 3 days to dry. Most of them recommend at least 4 to 8 hours depending on the temperature. So we're going to leave them in my basement, which is around 60 degrees. It's not very damp down there. We're gonna give them a full 24 hours to dry in the basement, and then we will be bringing them upstairs and placing them on my oven where the pilot lights and the warmth from that will help to dry out the paint further, and they will be sitting under the kitchen range, which will be pulling air up and out and hopefully ventilating and making the paints nice and dry and ready for the testing. So they'll get 1 day in the basement, 2 days under the kitchen range with the heat from the stove. For testing, we are going to be testing daylight and nighttime performance. I'm not really looking for what color blends in the best. That is going to depend on your environment, your area that you are trying to blend in, the season. The color matching, it is not what this test is about. This test is for light reflectiveness and IR compliance. So we will have a daytime section. The daytime section, we are going to compare how each of these reflect the sunlight when the sun is about directly overhead. That is going to give us a good example of how these will perform during the day and if they do shine and reflect sunlight very much. And they shouldn't, because they claim that they're all very flat, and we're gonna make sure that that is true and compare it to the rifle as well as our helmet. If it's necessary, we will also use a white light during the daytime to see if they reflect at all, but that will be determined based on how sunny it is that day. Then we will go into the night section of the testing. And the night section is going to be 2 parts. We are going to test for white light. So I'm going to have a flashlight at various distances. We are going to see how these 3 canteens and the controls reflect light when a white light is shown upon them. And then we are going to test their IR compliance. So we're going to get the camera behind the night vision. We are going to place them at a few different ranges most likely and see naturally how much IR light these reflect, or if they reflect not enough where they become black spots or they become very dark when contrasted to a natural backdrop. We're going to test to see how that looks, as well as when exposed to IR light. So we'll get our IR illuminator out there and we are going to shine some IR light on these and see if they light up or not. For the white light that we'll be using, we have a 350 to 150 lumen stream light. I think this is the micro stream or mini stream. Just takes one of the basic handheld everyday carry style white lights. That's 350 lumens on high mode and 150 on low mode. If I can get it to, there we go, on low mode. We also, if that is not enough or we want to step it up, we do have an 850 lumen weapon mounted light we can use. And for the nighttime testing, we have a D-Ball i2, and the night vision device is a PVS-14 Gen 3. So let's get into this testing. For the testing criteria, we had to change due to the weather, which ended up being a blessing. So these canteens had a full week to dry on the stovetop. The test was also conducted inside, which allowed me to put more items in the background to show different levels of IR compliance, as well as the light that we used was just the 150 lumen stream light. And for the IR device, we used the D-Ball briefly at the end, but it was mostly the PVS-14 built into the helmet. And for the daylight testing, I simply held the canteens in front of me, as well as the control items, under the living room light that I have, which is a relatively warm orange glow similar to the sun. And that was there to simulate our sunlight, which actually ended up being very useful and very handy in showing how these different items reflected white light and sunlight or similar light in a very controlled manner. First up, the daylight testing, and we have our control, which is the ECH. It did pretty well, very minimal reflection. There definitely was some, especially in the flatter parts of the helmet, but all in all, it did pretty well for what it is, and I can see why the military still uses helmet covers. There is some shine to it, but this is kind of our baseline, and it performed pretty decently here in this test. So next up, we have the Anderson lower. They claim that they coat these to the proper mil spec, and I was pretty surprised. I was relatively impressed. I thought it would shine a lot more. There definitely was some reflection to it, and it did push out light depending on the angle it was held. and how the light was hitting it. But all in all, I was pretty impressed by the AR lower. It definitely was not as bad as I had thought it was going to be. Next, we have our first paint, which was the Rust-Oleum, and it did very well. I was very surprised by how well the Rust-Oleum did for it being a more cheap budget paint. It really broke up the shine from the canteen and did a very good job to mute the reflection and really not throw a lot of light back. Even the lighter paint that we had did very well. Next is the Krylon, and the Krylon went on very splattery, which I tried to make as even as possible. Well, I was very curious if it would help or hinder the test at all with the reflection, and the Krylon did not do all too great. It was very shiny still. The patterning of the spray really didn't help at all. In fact, I think it had arguably made it worse as a concentrated paint in some areas, and it really did not do a ton to reduce the daylight reflection. Finally, we have Plasti-Dip, and Plasti-Dip also did very poorly. It did even worse than Krylon by far. It went on very evenly, and it so happened to match the canteen well, but it really did not do much of anything to reduce the shine and daylight settings. It really did basically nothing and was a very poor option for daylight reflection in this test. Moving right into the ACH, the ECH, it performed pretty well in the white light test. Again, this was the 150 lumen streamlight. We were about 5 meters away from the target location, and this did pretty decently. I mean, it wasn't amazing. I could definitely see why helmet covers are still pretty important. The light did reflect a decent bit, that's for sure, and it could stand out in certain environments, absolutely. But all in all, not too bad. This gives us our good baseline standard of what to look for moving forward. Up next, we had the AR lower. Of course, again, the same Anderson lower. It also performed pretty decently in this test. It did, shine a little bit. It had some reflection to it, but all in all, it was not too bad. It was pretty modest in its performance. Again, relatively surprised that it really did not throw a bunch of light all over the place, and it was pretty decent. Not quite as good as the ACH, but not at all a poor performance. Moving on to the paints now, we have up first the Rust-Oleum, and the Rust-Oleum did, despite it being a lighter paint, did pretty well. This was honestly pretty impressive. The Rust-Oleum was doing very well for being the cheapest paint we had on hand today, and it performed surprisingly well. There was very minimal reflection. It did break up the reflection from the canteen well. Hopefully that shows in the video, but very impressed by the Rust-Oleum. Next we have Krylon, and Krylon, continuing the pattern, performed not as well as the Rust-Oleum did. It reflected a bit more, and I do understand it is a darker paint, but it definitely did not do as well as the Rust-Oleum did. It threw more light out, and that uneven pattern did not help it at all. The way the paint had splattered, definitely while I was filming this, I noticed that when I moved around, the camera didn't pick it up very well, but I did notice there was quite a bit of shift in the light as it moved left and right across the surface. Finally, of course, we had the Plasti-Dip, and it again performed the worst out of all of the options. The Plasti-Dip was a very reflective surface, and it just was about the same as the canteen was. It really did not do anything to help mute the light reflection. So lastly, I put together all of the test subjects in one location in the target area and put the light on them the way I had done throughout the test to show each of them compared against each other and what each looked like with the others around. And you can really tell the ACH did pretty well, the lower did pretty well, and the paints did okay, the Rust-Oleum seeming to do the best. Getting into the IR compliance now, we have, of course, the ACH, the ECH, which did very well. The ACH did not reflect much IR light at all, and it didn't absorb all of it as well. It didn't become an overly dark or an overly bright spot. There was still some reflection. I mean, we were pretty close during this test, but again, the ACH performing very well and being our nice baseline for testing moving forward. Next, moving to the mil-spec lower. So the lower absolutely lit up during the IR test. It was very reflective and pretty much bounced all of the IR light back at the camera. I was very much so surprised by this, as it was doing pretty good in the test up into this point, but in this test it basically glowed like a glow stick or a chem light and threw all of the light back at me. I was very surprised, and it completely failed the IR compliance test. I went ahead and looked at my rifle that I had put together, and you can see just how different some of these parts look under the IR light. The handguard, which is a Midwest Industries handguard, the MOE Magpul grip, and the CTR stock both performed very well and did not throw much IR light back at all, really absorbing it being very dark. But the lower and the upper itself was very reflective, and that was, again, a Colt upper and an IWI lower. So very interesting, and I could see why the paint is so important to break up those patterns and to make it so that when you are doing nighttime operations, your rifle is not glowing under IR light. Getting back into the test, the Rust-Oleum did pretty well. There was nothing overly exciting to say or overly negative. It did pretty modestly for this test. Very little IR reflection during the testing period. And in all honesty, I had heard that the Rust-Oleum was not very good under IR and not very night vision compliant, but in this testing, it did very well. You could clearly see where the canteen was shining and the Rust-Oleum was not, and really breaking up that reflection. So the Rust-Oleum did very well in this test. Moving on to Krylon. The Krylon did okay in this test. Again, that pattern on it really did not help. It definitely did better than it had in the last two tests. It did okay here, not reflecting too much IR light, but definitely more than the Rust-Oleum did, and not being anything overly impressive during the testing period. Finally, we have the Plasti Dip, which did pretty poorly in this test. You can see where the canteen was reflecting the IR light back at the camera, and the Plasti Dip basically reflected just as much as the canteen did. It did very little, if not nothing at all, to reduce the IR signature, and it reflected almost all of the light back into the camera to be seen. It did very poorly on this test, kind of showing that Plasti Dip was not a good option for tactical use. Lastly, I grabbed the D-Ball i2 and put the illuminator and laser on low power mode and reflected them off the table, the light from each, into the test items. And you could see that really each item did not perform overly bad, except for the AR lower. Again, it really did glow completely in reflected light all over the room from the IR illuminator. All the items under the IR light off of the PVS-14 also performed pretty decently, all very similar, with the clear winners being the ACH, ECH, and the Rust-Oleum paint, and the AR lower failing by quite a large margin, really glowing under the night vision. Now that leads us to the test results, and the ACH/the ECH performed the best, but very surprisingly, the Rust-Oleum, the cheapest paint we had tested, came in a very close second, followed by the Krylon, which had a mediocre performance, and finally the Plasti Dip in last place for paint. All of the paints, though, except for the Plasti Dip, performed better than a bare mil-spec lower. And I could definitely see, based on looking at the rifle under the night vision and the lower, as well as the paint, that it is very important to paint a rifle if you are worried about concealment. So there we have it, folks. If you're going to be painting a rifle, I would definitely recommend, of the three most common brands that I was able to find, Rust-Oleum definitely did by far the best of the three paints that we tested today, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. If this video does particularly well, we will maybe do a follow-up in which we test other paints. There is a lot out there that I wasn't able to get in time for the test period, and maybe if you guys ask nicely, we will do a rifle painting video as well. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed watching. Hit the like button if you did. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on the testing and how things went. Are you surprised by the results? Have a good one, King. Keep your heads held high. Bones out.